I'm going to go ahead and set the recordings up. Welcome and thank you for standing by. Today's call is being recorded. If you have any objections, you may disconnect at this time. You may begin.
Thank you, Kathy. Hello, everyone. This is Kieran Morgan of amateur radio call sign M0XTD, located in Warwick, Great Britain, and I am your moderator for today. Through the help of amateur radio volunteers and the crew on the International Space Station, we soon hope to establish radio contact with the International Space Station as it flies at more than 400 kilometers above the Earth. This is accomplished with ARIS, amateur radio on the International Space Station. The ISS is currently flying over the Indian Ocean, traveling at nearly 28,000 kilometers per hour, which, for better visualization, is about 8 kilometers per second. The contact for today will be performed using the ARIS Telebridge network, a worldwide network of amateur radio ground stations that enable students to contact the ISS. ARIS is a consortium of volunteers from 9 nations that develop and operate the amateur radio equipment on board the International Space Station. Those that support ARIS are the American Radio Relay League, the worldwide AMSAT Amateur Radio Satellite Corporations, the Canadian Space Agency, the European Space Agency, the Japanese Space Agency, Roscosmos, the Russian Space Agency, and of course NASA, the American Space Agency. The amateur radio ground station that will establish contact for us today is VK5ZAI, and that is Tony, located in Kingston, Australia. Thanks for helping us out today, Tony.
A pleasure, Karen.
Okay, we've got just a little over 5 minutes before the contact time. Our link up today is with the students of the Higher National School of Computer Science and Systems Analysis in Rabat, Morocco. Now let's check in with the students and Mr. Mohammed Essaidi. Mohammed, please tell us a little bit about the school and the students taking part today.
Okay, thank you, Kara. So, National Higher School of Computer Science and System Analysis, the celebration this year is 25th anniversary. And this is one of the events we have organizing framework of this celebration we have for this anniversary. So this is a flagship school which is exclusively specialized in information technology in Morocco. It is providing
Universities.
We are back. Sorry?
Yes.
Yes. The line was I think, broken, and now we're back.
4 minutes to AOS.
Okay. So shall I repeat the school presentation?
We'll do that. We'll do that at the end.
Okay. Good.
Okay. So sorry for that little interruption. Now let's go to Tony, VK5ZAI in Kingston, Australia. Tony, before the contact begins, tell us a little bit about your station, where you are, and how you want to handle the contact today.
Thanks, Karen. My ground station consists of a Yaesu FT847 transceiver driving a linear amplifier and feeding a 10-turn helical antenna. For receiving, I use low noise preamplifiers that are used at the masthead, and audio is fed both ways via a home designed and built interface unit. The antennas are controlled via a dedicated SatTrack 3 computer. I have a standby station as well should we have a failure here. I'm located in Kingston, a small rural town with a population of approximately 2,300 people, located in the southeast coast of South Australia. In the summer holiday season, the population doubles as tourists flock to the beaches for relaxing and fishing. The town services a thriving rock lobster fishing industry, along with sheep, cattle, deer farming, and in recent years numerous vineyards and wineries have expanded into the area. An hour's drive to the east is Coonawarra, world renowned for its red wines, and to the south the picturesque city of Mount Gambier, South Australia's second largest, built on the site of an extinct volcano with its blue lake and forestry industry. Kingston and the southeast towns in general cater for many tourists during the year who flock to the magnificent beaches and scenic coastline this part of Australia has to offer. So, come and visit us sometime. You'll be so glad you did. Thanks, Karen.
Thank you, Tony. Okay, we've got just a little over a minute before we hopefully make contact with the International Space Station. Remember, everyone, what we're doing today is an experiment on the International Space Station, so we can never tell the results, positive or negative, until the experiment is over. Students, please make sure you speak clearly into the microphone, and remember to say the word over at the end of your question. That is the key that lets the astronauts switch to transmit and us to receive. Okay, so in just about 60 seconds or so, we're going to see that the ISS is going to be within range of Tony. So I'm going to hand over now to Tony in Kingston, Australia, and let him start calling the space station. And good luck, everyone, in your contact. Over to you, Tony.
Thank you, Kieran. Okay, Mohammed and the students, I will call several times. He may not come back the first time because he's not quite in range yet. We still have about 45 seconds. When I establish a good contact, I will say, now, would Mayamona ask her first question? Then she will step up and ask her question, and it'll follow on in that sequence until all the questions are through, or until we run out of time. Okay, if you stand by now, I will start calling. Calling NA1SS, NA1SS. This is VK5 Zulu Alpha India, VK5ZAI, calling on schedule. Do you copy, Mark? Nothing yet. Calling NA1SS, NA1SS. This is a VK5 Zulu Alpha India, VK5ZAI, calling on the space station on a scheduled contact. Do you copy, Mark? Over.
Victor Kilo 5 Zulu Alpha India. This is November Alpha 1 ISS. And Mark copies. Loud and clear. How me?
Thank you, Mark. We have the school in Morocco ready to ask you questions. My name is Tony, and I will now put it over to the school. Mia Mama, could you ask your first question, please? Over.
This is Maimuna. Apart from exploring it, what could humanity possibly win from getting to space? Over.
Anytime we do something that's challenging, that's beyond our current capability, there are lots of benefits, things we learn that spin off in other directions. And I think expanding our capabilities into space is much better than gaining technologies because of something like warfare.
Next question.
This is Tukeno. What impact has space research in the biomedical field? Over.
Great question. By learning how to keep humans healthy in long-duration space flights, we also learn how to keep people healthy on the ground. For example, patients with bone density issues, there's a very good correlation with spaceflight for that. And also, we've had some research projects that have nothing to do with spaceflight, but we have hopes that some lung tissue sample we've grown in space may help fight cancer in the future. Over.
Next question.
This is Hajar. In weightlessness, fluid shifts upwards, forming kidney stones and shrinking heart. How do you prevent yourself from similar dangers? Over.
These are all fantastic questions. Astronauts in space have to pay attention to their diet and exercise. We get scheduled for about 2 hours of exercise a day so that our bodies maintain the ability to deal with the forces of gravity when we return to Earth. Over.
Next question.
This is Hamza. How many hours do you spend on research? Over.
That's an interesting question because in some ways I don't spend any time on research. There's about 250 experiments going on the space station at any given time. But my job is more like a lab technician. I'm not doing a lot of the observations or any of the data analysis. I'm making sure that the facility is running, and sometimes I am a subject of the experiments. But I would say that every minute of every day in the space station, there is research going on.
Adam? Nova?
This is Adam. What are the artificial intelligence applications used in space missions today? Over.
We're developing artificial intelligence applications for use in planning software for further and further deep space missions. And we also have, on the space station right now, we have a robot called Robonaut that has some limited abilities to respond automatically.
Next.
This is Salma. What advice would you give to someone aspiring to be an astronaut? Over.
Salma, I would say first figure out what it is that you love to do and then find a way to do it for a job. I think every astronaut has a different background, but they've all been successful in what they were doing beforehand. Over.
Next.
This is Wayne. What is your opinion on the Arecibo message? Over.
I think the Arecibo message is a very hopeful and generous thing that we did. And I say that because can you imagine how it would feel for us if we were to receive a message from some other intelligent beings in space, and how much that would mean to us as we try to understand our place in the universe. Over.
Next.
This is Abdul Wahab. What is your take on the Fermi paradox? Over.
It's a great question. I actually had to ask people on the ground recently what the Fermi paradox is, but I think the paradox that we don't have much evidence of intelligence, any evidence of intelligence life outside of our own, and the fact that there's a lot of theories that predict lots of intelligent life in the universe is largely because of the amount of space between potential civilizations and the difficulty for us to be able to communicate with each other. Over.
Next.
This is Rian. Elon Musk revealed that he is willing to colonize Mars. What do you think about it? Over.
I think it's a very worthy goal, and I think it will happen someday. It's been a goal of NASA's for quite a while. I do think that a stepping stone to getting to Mars is going to be setting up a space station of sorts on the moon, which means having some continuous human presence on the moon, I think would be the first step towards having human presence on a place that's as far away as Mars. Over.
Next.
This is Absaman. What upcoming ISS missions are you excited about? Over.
All great questions. We have 2 spacewalks coming up this month on the U.S. segment of the space station, and the Russians have spacewalks coming up the next month. So there's a lot of excitement coming up.
Next.
This is Sarah. We all know that space junk is becoming a real problem. Can you tell us a bit about some technology that can be used to get these objects under control? The possibilities of controlling the speed and path of these objects. Over.
Sarah, I'm not really an expert in that field, but my understanding is there's some currently existing technologies to have satellites do a better job of not becoming space junk as they get older, like changing their orbits to go further away from the Earth to a stable orbit where they won't cause problems. I can tell you that we have technologies to try to protect the space station from space junk. For example, we change our orbit sometimes. We have multiple layers of shielding on the space station, and we also track all of the space junk as much as possible so that we can predict where it will be and avoid its path. Over.
Next.
This is Usama. What kind of tests do you run on Earth before going on a space mission? Over.
Well, before becoming an astronaut, there's a lot of psychological, physical, and medical examinations. Some of them even involve how you work with a group and solve problems. But once you become an astronaut, There's all kinds of tests on the technical skills, for example, doing spacewalks, operating a robotic arm, being able to respond to emergencies on the space station, or on the spacecraft that you're going to use to fly to the space station. It's a very detailed training program, and there's tests throughout.
Next.
This is how long does it take to get used to zero gravity emissions since it's the first launch training? Over.
I would say for me it took me about a month before I really started feeling comfortable, but because of the complexity of the space station, I would say it took me about 2 months before I knew the space station well enough being up here to feel like I was really good at my job. Over.
Next.
This is Gary. Have you noticed any effects on your body from weightlessness?
Over.
Absolutely. For me, the fluid shift towards my head has caused more congestion than I would normally experience on the ground. I would say the strange thing for me was that it didn't feel so much like I was weightless as that somebody was pulling me up from the floor. It took me a long time to get used to any little tiny tap with my feet would send me towards the ceiling. Over.
Next.
This is Marwan. What are the side effects that an astronaut can suffer from being so long in space? Over.
Certainly, reduced bone density is something we strive to protect ourselves from, but also I know with the most recent one-year space flight, some of the symptoms those astronauts experienced were tenderness of the skin. But I would say also the longer we travel in space, the more issues we may have with loneliness as well. Over.
This will be the last question. Next.
This is Shayma. How long and what kind of missions do you have on the ISS? Over.
The missions are typically 4 to 6 months long. Like I mentioned, up to a year they could be. But they're all about making sure we're taking advantage of this laboratory in space to do research. Over.
Okay, Mark, if you could stand by. Students in Morocco, would you all come up with a big thank you for astronaut Mark? Thank you. Over. Well, thank you very much, Mark. I'll put it back to you for a final few words. Over.
I've ever received. I really appreciate the challenge. Over.
Sorry, Mark, I think we might have doubled there. We're just on the about to lose you now, and I'd like to thank you personally from Aris for the great questions and the great work you've done. Thank you. Over.
And thank you as well. Over.
Kieran, do you wish to...
Okay, so thank you, Tony. Congratulations to all the students and teachers at the Higher National School of Computer Science and Systems Analysis in Rabat in Morocco. You got 16 really interesting questions answered, and some really thought-provoking answers as well from Mark Vande Hei. Ladies and gentlemen, we have just shared a moment of history. Amateur radio station VK5ZAI, operated by Tony Hutchinson, contacted astronaut Mark Vande Hei, KG5GNP, working as NA1SS aboard the International Space Station, and spoke to the students attending the Higher National School of Computer Science and Systems Analysis in Rabat, Morocco. Mohammed, have you got anything else that you would like to add just before we sign off for today?
Well, I would like just to thank you, Kara, for everything. I thank Tony and also Mark, the astronaut, for the answers, the different questions that were given by the students of the school. Everybody here are excited about this contact. And, we're looking forward for other initiatives. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mohammed, and I do wish everybody a very good day today, and to keep up the enthusiasm and your good work that you're doing with space. Now, for the international volunteer team of ARIS, including the amateur radio societies around the world and the National Aeronautical Space Administration, NASA, this is Kieran Morgan, amateur radio call sign M0XTD, located in Warwick in Great Britain, sending my greetings to all of you in amateur radio terms, 7 3s, which means best wishes.